Our top story this evening, India is now focusing on launching an intensive, multi-pronged diplomatic offensive to isolate Pakistan on the global stage. This comes weeks after the Pulwama terror attack that resulted in the death of 40 CRPF personnel and Pakistan's alleged attack on military installations in India. Highly placed sources tell CNBC TV 18 that the government is now channelizing its efforts to ensure that Pakistan takes action, verifiable and credible action against terror groups in the coming days. Further, we learned from top government sources that all Indian ambassadors have been asked to share excerpts of dossier on Pulwama attacks with host governments. We are now joined by Sharat Sabharwal, who has been India's ambassador to Pakistan, and retired Air Marshal SBP Sinha as well. I'd like to go across to Ambassador Sabharwal first. Ambassador Sabharwal, India has launched a major diplomatic offensive. There has been a military offensive as well, and our forces are still on high alert. But this politicization of airstrikes and the casualty figure that is being debated among politicians, do you think that has hampered our diplomatic campaign to some extent?
No, I think this is certainly highly undesirable. I have had the occasion to say this earlier also, that for a long time after our independence, we had a broad consensus on foreign policy issues. It's only in very recent years that that consensus has frayed, and particularly in regard to excuse me, our Pakistan policy, things have got very politicized, and this kind of debate, it doesn't help our cause at all. Look, it would be good if some evidence could be put out regarding at least the damage caused to the structures that we intended to hit. But to my mind, the main purpose of this strike was to express our intent that we have the intent and we can cross the line and hit terror targets in Pakistan when required. And I think if you look at it from that point of view, the extent of damage should not get the kind of salience that it is getting in our national discourse. And I would say that we should again try and build the same kind of consensus that we had a very, very long time after our independence.
That's right. So we have consensus after a long time. We had political consensus as well, and politicization is not desirable. But let me go across to Air Marshal SBP Sinha. Air Marshal Sinha, what do you feel? Do you think the politics over the airstrike has put pressure on our forces to come up with evidence? Yesterday, the Air Chief B.S. Dhanoa was asked this question, and he said, we don't count casualty figures, and we can't give casualty figures. Do you think there is any way we can get evidence of the MiG-21 downing the F-16 jet? India has claimed that the F-16 fell in Pakistani territory and we saw parachutes coming down. Is there possibility of coming up with evidence of the Balakot strike as well? Air Marshal Sinha?
The armed forces work to serve the nation and they work on the orders of the government. They in no way get affected by what political parties do. Our armed forces are apolitical. But it is unfortunate that there is a debate on the outcome of the strike. What is important is that all airstrikes are carried out deep inside enemy territory, except for the ones that are being done in support of the army, which are close to the border. Therefore, you cannot have physical presence of people to get evidence. And that is why you have a system called bomb damage assessment. It is an assessment. When a target is identified, this target is identified based on actionable intelligence. In this case, the intelligence was the congregation of very large number of terrorists in Balakot camp. And the mission was decided to take on where these terrorists reside. And that is why the timing of the attack at 3:30 in the early morning, where they would not be dispersed outside doing various activities, they will all be asleep in their places of sleeping. And these structures have been destroyed. There are special weapons used which have hit this and caused the blast effect that is good enough to kill people. The aim of the strike was to eliminate maximum number of terrorists and to give a clear message to Pakistan that if you do not sort out terrorists operating from your soil, we will come and eliminate them. And this is what the government has done. What the government has said is based on the outcome of the mission as reported by the Indian Air Force. So if anybody questions the government, he is also questioning the professionalism of the Indian Air Force.
That's right. We're also lowering the morale of the forces who've done an exemplary job. But I'd like to go back to Ambassador Sharat Sabharwal at this point. Ambassador Sabharwal, top sources in the Indian government today confirmed that we have shared the evidence of the AMRAAM missile, which was fired in the Rajouri sector, which was fired at Indian military compounds. We've shared this with the United States because we are very certain that it was fired from an F-16 coming from Pakistan. Do you think this is an important step which will put pressure on Pakistan? And what could be the consequences if US comes up with very strong proof?
Look, we did see a report that the American embassy in Islamabad has taken up this matter with the Pakistanis. You would recall that even during the Cold War days, the Americans gave a lot of weapons to the Pakistanis, which were meant to be used against the communists. But they were used against us in 1965 and 71. Obviously, today, the Americans are a little more attentive towards our concerns. I do know that some precision-guided munitions were given to the Pakistanis when terrorism was rife there, when they were fighting terrorists in the Fatah area in South Waziristan, later on in North Waziristan, and these were specifically meant to be used there. So if they use that weapon against us, that is obviously against the end user agreement, whatever they may have. So we'll see where it goes. I just saw a report that the American embassy had taken it over with the Pakistanis and they were taking a response.
Right. So India has been saying that this is a misuse of those F-16s, and those F-16s have been used against India. And I'd like to go across to Air Marshal Sinha. Mr. Sinha, we have been hearing about a lot of propaganda. Even this morning, there were reports from Pakistan, and these were reports all over in Pakistani media, that an Indian Navy submarine has gone near Pakistani waters and it was forced to turn away by the Pakistani Navy. Now, India has vehemently denied such propaganda and said that no such incident has happened, and some of the videos that are being circulated are rather old. Do you think now that the Balakot strike is over, this propaganda war will continue over the next few days, and this is something that the forces and diplomats will have to be prepared for?
The Pakistani government and the Pakistani military is used to this fake news generation. And they have a factory which generates fake news, not only now after Balakot. They have been doing it for decades. If you recall, all these years, they have been denying presence of terrorists on their soil. Osama bin Laden was found next to their military academy. So, Pakistan has always been doing this. There's nothing new. It's only that we have to educate our people not to get carried away by this spread of fake news. And we also need to have some means to counter the spread of fake news.
Okay. We need to counter this fake news very strongly. And a final question to Ambassador Sabharwal. Ambassador Sabharwal, what do you feel about our diplomatic campaign? Top sources have been saying that we will now go all out to sanction and blacklist Maulana Masood Azhar at the 1267 committee. Will that really achieve anything in our larger war against terror? And at the same time, how can this diplomatic campaign achieve success?
Look, it has to be a continuous effort. And as I told, I think, mentioned in one of your shows, this goal of isolating, within quote, isolating Pakistan is not realistic because other countries have their own interests. The Americans, because they are working on Afghanistan, a deal with the Taliban. The Chinese are deeply invested. The Saudis have their relationship with Pakistan in the context of their tussle with Iran, and so on. But short of that, that goal of isolating, I think we have been able to find sufficient ground to put pressure on the Pakistanis post-Pulwama to make them take a few steps that they have taken. Frankly, I don't think listing of Masood Azhar on the putting him on the list of global terrorists would achieve anything much, because you would recall that Hafiz Saeed, he was put on that list after 2008. That time also the Pakistanis along with the Chinese were blocking his listing. But after the Mumbai attack, he was listed. but he continues to roam around. This listing requires that the person should not be allowed to travel, he should not carry arms, his assets should be frozen, and yet he has been extremely active, not active against India, but also active in Pakistan's internal politics. He put up candidates in the last elections. We have spent so much of effort in the past. If it happens now, it would be a good development, symbolically at least, but not in real terms. You would have seen that today Pakistanis have taken some more steps. They have placed 44 persons connected with various terror organizations, including the brother and son of Masood Azhar, under preventive detention. Now, this is a reading from the old script. This has been played to us time and time and time again, and I wouldn't expect much to come out of it. So we have to continue this effort and see where it goes. So far, if you ask me, I haven't seen the Pakistanis doing anything which would tell me they are doing more than the symbolic and reversible steps that they had taken in the past. They have to go beyond that. And we'll wait. It's good that we are undertaking this diplomatic effort again. As I said, this is an effort which has to continue, and we'll see where it takes us.